Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Social Contract, a Commander podcast. I'm Mike Almond, and joining me is my co-host, Alex Lapp. Alex, what's up, man?
Not too much, Mike. Today we're talking about snakes.
Yeah, them fang boys.
Rattlesnakes, in specific.
Yeah, reptiles are cool, right? Like, I mean,
not the real kind of rattlesnake.
Oh.
We know what those are, I think.
I need to prepare completely different notes. I'm sorry. Alex, tell me what a rattlesnake is while I adjust.
Well, I'll tell you what it isn't. It's not the kind of snake that you see on the ground in the woods, and then it rattles at you and you run away. At least not literally. Metaphorically, that is exactly what it is. So here's what I came up with. I worked through some various ideas for how I wanted to define it. A rattlesnake is something I can choose to do, or something that will inevitably happen to affect the state of the game if one of my opponents does something I don't want them to do, and that one or more opponents believe or know will happen and don't want it to happen.
Okay.
So it's kind of like a threat that I have control of, and I can basically make demands with it.
Sure.
If I choose to.
It's one of those, like, this isn't a threat, this is a promise kind of
It's
a
promise.
Yeah, so I get what you're saying. So it's something like either a card on the table that people can see and encourages players to stay away from you, or kind of, let you be. Otherwise, they're going to get bit or lose something in the process. Or just you actually using the power of your own words, making a proclamation that, like, hey, if you do this, or if you interact with me that way, I can just let you know it's not going to go well for you.
Right. I think that's probably the most interesting definition. Let's hear what yours was, and then let's talk about this more abstract idea of a rattlesnake that might not be any specific card we can look up on TCG Player.
So that actually kind of goes in, like, the way that I defined it is kind of it's kind of like what I just said. Like, there's no it's one of those things that you know it when you see it. You know what I mean? Like, again, it is a threat. Now, whether it's a threat on a card, or whether it's a, just, it can be a threat, it can be a warning, it can be a, like, cautionary advice, like, hey, I wouldn't do that, because it doesn't necessarily have to be your rattlesnake. You just have to recognize it and say, we need to stay away. And if anything that you see on the table, or the way that somebody's acting, well, that's a rattlesnake. That's a, hey, stay away, or make sure that you're aware of your environment at the table before you proceed with whatever you're planning on doing.
Right, and there are a lot of interesting ways that you can do that.
Yeah.
We talked about some of them off mic. Some of the ones that we came up with were revealing a card from a hidden zone from your hand.
Yep.
Or if you tutor a card and then reveal it, and then put it either into your hand or on the top of your library, or even into your graveyard, you're independently confirming beyond doubt that you 100% do have this card, and then the next logical leap is, and you intend to use it.
Right. The reference that we've made abundantly clear is the most powerful counterspell is the one that everybody knows about, because it counters more spells than the one time that you actually use it.
That's exactly what we're talking about today. It's not just the counterspell, it's all rattlesnakes act this way. At least the ones that I care about. And speaking of counterspells, that is a perfect example of a rattlesnake. What is a more iconic situation than you leaving 2 mana
Two
up,
open
2 blue
mana.
mana,
Yep.
and implying or saying that you have a counterspell. And I'll tell you right now, Mike, when I'm doing that, when I'm bluffing or telling people, it doesn't really matter which, that have a counterspell available and I intend to use it, I'm not going to go get like my tap lands or my duels that just have the tiny little mana symbols. No, I'm going to go get the unset, full art, just solid blue islands and just put them right there at the front of my mana base and just sit there. There's no way that anyone is not going to realize that I have exactly 2 blue mana up. I mean, you really gotta spell it out for people sometimes, right? You can't be too subtle.
Right. And here's the thing, like, I usually, when I'm playing the game, unless it's like a game I really want to win, if I'm playing a game and I'm just kind of sitting there having a good time and stuff like that, I'm totally oblivious to that fact sometimes, that somebody has 2 open blue mana. But you know what's awesome?
Mm-hmm.
When that same person, or when somebody else tells me, hey, watch out, they've got that 2 blue mana, or when you, as a player who has 2 blue mana and want to let them know, use, like I said before, the power of words. You're letting them know, hey, I'm going to leave this untapped, and I'll pass my turn. There are very few statements that are scarier than I'll leave this untapped and pass.
And it doesn't have to be 2 blue mana. It can be 6 and a blue for the Cycrypt.
Right.
It can be a single white for the swords or other 1 mana removal spell. And as long as it's a combination of mana that people readily recognize as having access to a controlling removal spell, or just leaving a ton of mana untapped. If you leave almost all or all of your mana untapped, people are going to look at you during everyone else's turn.
Right.
Because you
they
can
want to
do
see how
anything.
you react.
Yeah, exactly.
A rattlesnake is not just the fact that the card is on the table, which means you have to be ready for that card. It's the player doing things or leaving open mana or telling you what they could do, or even that they could do something that makes it to where you are constantly looking around for, okay, where does this snake come from and how does it get me? And that's why it's counterspelling something that is a big sweeping play. Me not being a stacks player, I still recognize how fun that can be, where it's like, whoa, this player was going to win the game, but we stopped him.
Yeah.
But getting the rattlesnake is the perfect solution sometimes. And it's just more fun for me.
Yeah, I mean, it's very difficult to defeat a rattlesnake, isn't it? Because the only way that you can defeat one is by baiting it.
Right.
Forcing
getting it to bite
hand,
something that you don't want it to bite.
Exactly. Yeah. And the problem is that you never know just how juicy you're going to have to make that bait before it bites. And that just goes into a whole rabbit's hole of mind games and gabbits, and we'll be here all day. Just think about some of that stuff while we talk about some
all of these cards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's start off with a broader category. And we mentioned the power of words, or wheelings and dealings, or the silver tongue, however you want to call it. This is selectively revealing information or using your political voice to say, oh, maybe you shouldn't do that because look at that. They've got that right there. Or if you do that to me, I'm going to do this to you. You can combine that with any card or without any cards, just the implication of a card or a general threat. But we also have some other general categories like foretell cards. The other episode during our Kaldheim set review, we picked out a specific foretell card called Doomscar.
Yep.
Which is a sorcery for 3 double white, destroy all creatures, and foretell for 1 double white. And as a quick reminder, foretell says that during your turn you may pay 2 and exile this card from your hand face down. Cast it on a later turn for its foretell cost. So because that's a sorcery, you can only cast it from exile on your turn whenever you could cast a sorcery. However, you don't have to keep that spell hidden.
Right.
As long as you have access to a hidden zone, like your hand, or cards face down in a zone, like exile or the battlefield, but not your library, because you don't have access to the information in your library. Right. You can reveal that information. And one example is that you could basically reveal Doomscar from your hand, reveal that you're foretelling it, and just leave it there.
Yep.
And now the entire table has a game to play. And that game is, how much am I willing to commit to the board while that board wipe is still available?
While it's hanging out.
This is not the only card that does that. But Mike, how do you feel about this kind of thing?
So I mean, that's part of why I love this. I love the call time set. I love foretell as a mechanic because I think the best trap is the one that people trip when they knew about it. Like, oh, It was still here and you still did it. So there we are. I don't want a feels bad situation. And I think Foretell is really, really nice at kind of splitting the gap on that. Because, hey, this is here. And if you're putting it down and you're using it the way that it's specified to be played, if you're just hiding information but it's there, well, okay. They kind of walked into a trap and they should have known. Or you can do it the way that I'm choosing to do it. And it's like, all right, cool. I'm going to go foretell this. By the way, this is what it is.
I'm foretelling this prophecy that all of your stuff is going to get blown up.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know when this prophecy is going to be fulfilled, but trust me, it'll happen.
Well, and that's where where you get into the really scary things where it's like, yeah, a board wipe that you could foretell, scary. Mm-hmm. The Mystic Reflection card where choose target non-legendary creature. The next time one or more creatures or planeswalkers enter the battlefield this turn, they enter as copies of this chosen creature. You're basically telling people, hey, I hope you really don't want to play the things that you're trying to play, or I really hope that you got a really good follow-up for whatever I'm going to turn into a 0-1 plant.
There's an idea in, I guess you would call it politics or sociology, behavioral science, whatever it is, called chilling effects. And you may have heard of it. Mm-hmm. Chilling effects is when the knowledge that something will be punished or will be persecuted is so well known and so great, so significant, that it reduces the instances of it happening without it's almost like it's like how some people argue for the death penalty. Not me personally, but some people say the death penalty is so bad that it convinces criminals not to commit crimes because they might get the death penalty. Okay. This is like that, but a little lighter.
Sure. No, this is kids trying to go into the refrigerator to get a snack, but remembering that mom said that they were going to be really upset and they were going to be in trouble if they ate anything before dinner.
Right.
It's the deterrent because of the potential consequence.
Right. It's an even stronger effect than saying that the rattlesnake is going to counter every spell that isn't played, because it's not just every spell that isn't played. It's that people's plans will change around the fact that you can disrupt other kinds of plans. For example, if you have Doomscar or any of these other cards that we're about to talk about in this board wipe on the board effect, and we do have a few else to talk about, it's not just that they'll be reticent to commit to the board and nobody will really want to do anything. That is an option. People will freeze out. But there is the other thing that can happen, chilling effects, which is that people's strategy changes. And that can be for the better or for the worse. It's for the better if they have to change to a non-optimal strategy for their deck, or just kind of dirtle out. But the other thing can happen too, where if you're not controlling the narrative at the table and doing your politics correctly, the entire rest of the pod can say, hey, there's like 3 of us and only 1 of them. We can force them to blow it up by hurting them. And this is the thing you don't want to happen. Mike, has that ever happened to you during a rattlesnake?
Here's the thing. I'm sure it has, but more times than not, whenever that does happen to me, and I'm the thing I like most about rattlesnakes is if I get bit by a rattlesnake, I don't blame the other player. Like, I walked into that rattlesnake's den.
You knew it was going to happen. The inevitability almost pushes away the responsibility because it was going to happen already. The bad news was when they told you it would happen, not when it actually happened.
Right. Yeah. Danger, do not cross. Well, I crossed. Well, now you're getting hit by a snake-shaped car. Anyway.
So, Doomscar is the newest of these, to my knowledge, but we do have some real classics here that you may recognize, like Nevinyrral's Disc or Larry Nevin's Disc, which is a 4-mana artifact that says Nevinyrral's Disc enters the battlefield tapped, and then it has the activated ability 1 tap, destroy all artifacts, creatures, and enchantments. This is the classic. When you think of Rattlesnake, when I think of Rattlesnake, I think Nev's Disc.
Yep.
Because, yes, the first turn you put it out, you can't use it. You might be able to if you can untap it. For the most part, you'll leave it on the field. And that entire time, if nobody can remove it, and that's very possible, it is an artifact, sure, then the result when it's untapped is that as long as you have 1 mana available, you are always threatening to wipe the board. And it's really obvious.
Mm-hmm.
So you get all of those effects. You get people don't want to mess with you. You get people don't want to commit artifacts, creatures, and enchantments to the board. You get people don't play their deck optimally because they can't do their main strategy. This is just, it's brutal. And this is really the epitome of a Rattlesnake card, Mike.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, and you know what? If you love yourself some Nev's Disc, but man, it's just waiting that turn for it to be able to turn online.
Doesn't quite have that bite.
Yeah. You know what? If you got the mana for it, how about a Perilous Vault?
Yes.
4 mana artifact. Yes. That comes into play. Doesn't come into play tapped, more importantly. But it does have a higher activation cost. For 5 generic and tap it, exile Perilous Vault, exile all non-land permanents. So hey.
Yeah.
You got those indestructible gods that are being a problem? No longer. Let's get rid of everything.
Mike, this card is genuinely just terrifying. Everything that Nev's Disc is, people are like, oh my god, I'm going to lose all my artifacts, creatures, and enchantments. Mm-hmm. But you know that there are certain decks that will just run that. Like, for example, Super Friends decks will just run that because it doesn't destroy planeswalkers. Right. Perilous Vault is completely different. Perilous Vault says, this game, except for lands, is starting over from the beginning. If you do anything I don't like, if you do that thing, if you mess with my board, this is the ultimate crackdown. Exile all non-land permanents. Now, you have to hold 5 mana up, so this is much more difficult. But if you're in a deck that can readily produce mana at instant speed, for example, if you have an Ashnod's Altar, if you Krark Clan Ironworks, if you have some Mana Dorks, things that can generate mana that you don't necessarily use every single turn, but you can get them in a pinch. Sure. This effect is so chilling. Nobody wants you to do this. Like, people think, oh, I can recover from creatures going to my graveyard. I can reanimate some of my creatures. I can get some of my artifacts back. None of it.
Nope.
Just nasty.
You better have a Kai out and hope that you're playing stuff from exile at the best. Because otherwise, there's not a whole lot of ways to get around this thing when it activates, and man, that's a really good way to reset a game for the most part and make a whole lot of people very unhappy, or at the very least one person extremely unhappy and everybody else content with what's been done.
Now there's another kind of card in this set which is I guess you would say, you call it a Passover card, because this kind of effect does sit on board and does threaten a board wipe, but certain permanents can be anointed and protected from the board wipe. Sure. These tend to be weaker simply because they take longer to set up, but they used to be more popular. How about Oblivion Stone for 3? It's an artifact. 2 activated abilities. The first one, pay 4 and tap, put a fate counter on target permanents. And then 5 and tap, sack Oblivion Stone, destroy each non-land permanent without a fate counter on it, then remove all fate counters from all permanents. Now, yeah, that's really, really slow and difficult to see used for, but this represents an entire class of cards. There are several cards like this. I don't have them all here, but this kind of thing where if you are in a meta that just doesn't have very much spot removal, which totally common, you can use an effect like Oblivion Stone to just dominate the board, to constrict everybody. You are the arbiter of what lives and what dies. If people allow this to stay on the board, as costly as it is, this is very punishing, Mike.
My favorite thing to do with this card is play it on a turn where I have 8 mana, play it, pass. And then wait for it to get back to my turn. Because people are scared about me blowing up the stone. And you know what? If people are scared about me blowing up the stone, that means that they are not going to put out all the stuff that they were thinking about.
That's
or at least it's a conversation.
You don't have to protect anything. You can just blow it up.
Yeah, and when it comes to my turn, if there's no reason for me to blow up the board yet, or if it's got enough of a lock on what's going on, okay, great. I'm going to put a fate counter on my commander real quick. Okay, now I'll untap. And just have that mana up. Yeah, it means that you're not doing as much stuff, but like you said, if you're planning for something, and your plan is basically throwing a wrench in everybody else's plans, well, that means that you're playing at the same pace. They have to stop. They have to think. They have to do all of these different considerations that they weren't going to do before.
Let's talk about one last board wipe on the board, and this one is quite the reputation, Mike. And that's World Slayer.
Yay! We did
5
an equipment!
Mana, artifact equipment. Whenever equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, destroy all permanents other than World Slayer. And
not non-land.
Yeah, so all the lands, all the non-land permanents, everything except World Slayer is in the graveyard for 10 mana.
Yeah, there is that.
This is and of course, really mean.
It's it's terrible.
So mean.
No, this is terrible. Like, I did my triumphant arms in the air, hooray equipment. We're talking about it. At the same time, this is a card that you play because you are also playing, like, I'm going to make my lands indestructible, or here's my
Sure.
everything's fine kind of stuff.
This is like, oh, you want to mess with me?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know, dude. This sword is kind of dangerous. I wouldn't do that.
Right. And again, unless you've got the reduction or a Sigarda's Aid or something along those lines where it's coming in, equipping, this is going to take a bit. But
if you're in an equipment deck, this is just great.
But if you're in an equipment deck, holy cow. I'd like to make all of my permanents indestructible and attack.
So
Bye.
That's a great category, and there's many more that we haven't mentioned. We're not trying to mention them all.
Sure.
But let's move on to our second category, and that's a category of cards, Mike, that we don't really see very much in our format, really only the best of the best. And I think we may need to have a longer discussion, probably not this episode, but in a later episode, about why fogs do not really see play in EDH, despite the fact that the Command Zone data collection set revealed that roughly 50% of all games end in combat damage.
Yeah, which is alarming.
Yeah.
There's like I sit here and I try and talk about, well, combat's a fun way to win, I guess, but I like doing all these other things. And then I examined all of my decks and I went, oh, most of these win by swinging out somehow. Like, even,
it's an easy way to win.
Right. It's and at the same time, it's also so fun to I want to put all of the things on the table. So it seems weird that with as many games ending with combat, and it might be a little bit higher, a little bit lower in your meta, but combat is still a factor more times than not. Even if it's not ending the game, it's still progressing the game. The idea that fogs aren't as prevalent is kind of weird, right?
Well, that's the thing, is because there are many classes of card in Commander that don't see a lot of play, but some of those cards have such fantastic value that they do still see play, even though the category of cards doesn't. Like,
man, that sounds like a teaser.
Maze of Ith.
Hey, there it is.
Maze of Ith is a land with no mana abilities, but it has untap target attacking creature, prevents all combat damage that would be dealt to and dealt by that creature this turn. Mike, I can't even tell you how true that adage is, that the Maze of Ith on the board that's untapped will turn away far more than one creature per turn, because why wouldn't it? Why would you bother attacking when you know that I'm going to turn your creature back so you don't attack me? And then the next player, same situation. Attack me, it's still untapped.
But it's even better than that, because if you have a Maze of Ith out, that all of what you said is absolutely true. But the best thing is when somebody has their big stompy Xenagos deck and they see that you have a Maze of Ith and they're like, well, okay. Hey, Mike, is it okay for me to attack this person? You're like, yeah, go for it. And then the next person, hey, Mike, is it okay for me to attack this person? Absolutely. All right, well, I'm going to attack you and make you use that Maze of Ith. Are you sure? Could go bad. Okay. It's like, I love Maze of Ith. Yes, it's a land. Counted as a spell when you're constructing your deck.
Exactly.
But, oh my gosh, it's so fun.
This is in so many of my decks. I am in love with Maze of Ith. It is so effective. And you wouldn't think things that affect one creature in Commander tend to be viewed as a little bit less valuable than things that affect multiple targets or the entire board, like a board wipe. But in many ways, this is as good as a normal fog, if not better, because number one, it's repeatable. And number two, it's on the board. We've had rats on the board and we've had fogs on the board. But have we had frogs on the board?
Yeah, we're talking about my good spiny boy.
That's yeah, go for
Spore
it.
Frog.
Yeah.
1 green. Creature frog, it's a 1/1. Okay. But you can sacrifice Spore Frog, prevent all combat damage that would be dealt this turn.
Oh, yeah.
Every Marin player, every Golgari recursion deck, every one of those is drooling at the mention of the Spore Frog. First of all, he looks adorable, even though he's like literally like made of plague.
Very fungi.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's another one of those things where, okay, cool, I have this on board, so it's almost like when you know you have to take down somebody's shields before you can actually hit them. Mm-hmm. And it's like, okay, well, is this going to be enough for him to do it? Is this going to be enough for him to do it?
That's the thing.
This going to be? It's perfect.
We talked about that with the Foretell stuff, and it's just so interesting. This gambit that comes into play immediately as soon as you have access to instant speed rattlesnake effects. Mm-hmm. Everyone else who knows about it, which is everyone, because you're making your plans well known and very clear. Everyone at the table is now playing your game. You have warped the entire meta of this game around your rattlesnake. That's what a good rattlesnake does. Am I going to commit enough to the board to get them to wipe? Do I even want to do that? What should I commit? Should I put out my second best thing to try to bait that counterspell out or that Spore Frog out? Should I swing with this much to try to bait the fog out? They can't see into your head. They don't know what you're thinking. And so their decision-making, the quality of their decisions becomes worse.
Or at the very least, the amount of time and energy that they have to spend on it.
Yeah, decision paralysis.
Yeah.
It's quite devious, really. What else do we have in this category of fogs?
We got our boy Angus.
Angus, I love this boy. This is one expensive boy.
Yeah.
Holy moly. Yeah. Angus Mackenzie. He has an old text box. Let's pull up his new text box.
Please do.
Yeah.
I'm looking out. I don't have bad vision, but I've got it like on full enhance, and I'm still having some trouble here.
What does that guy say? Is it present or what?
Anytime that the tap symbol is actually just a like italicized capital T, love it.
Yeah. They changed that because tap does not start with a T in every language.
Oh, hey, and, that makes sense.
Magic is in many languages. So, Angus Mackenzie is a legendary creature, human cleric for green, white, blue. It's a 2/2 with an activated ability, pay green, white, blue, tap, prevent all combat damage that would be dealt this turn. Activate this ability only before the combat damage step. Okay. That's interesting that they have that quality. It's on the reserve list. It's $270. This is a really cool commander. Pillow Fort decks love this guy. For sure. He is so expensive. Anyway, so you have a repeatable 3-mana fog effect in the command zone. And this card was printed in 1995. 1994. Oh,
yeah, I was going to say, oh, wow. Oh, boy.
This is a genuinely interesting commander. I wish that they would reprint it, but they won't because it's on the reserve list.
Yeah. Curse you list.
I think this is one of Richard Garfield's D&D group characters. You know, they have many of their D&D characters came into the legend set, like Gabriel Angelfire. Just the very weird sounding names. These are all from their D&D campaigns.
Sure. That's actually pretty cool. I didn't know that. That's pretty neat. Oh,
so talk to me about Angus.
I hope I get a big enough D&D campaign someday to where I can make Magic cards out of it.
Make a card game out of it, yeah.
Yeah. Well, no. WotC, don't come for me. I don't want to make a competitive game. I want to synergize with you. Let's be friends. Speaking of let's be friends, you know who probably gets along with Angus Mackenzie?
Who?
Ith, High Arcanist. Also, slightly,
Love it.
He's I don't know if he's in the same level of D&D name, but High Arcanist is that's some D&D stuff.
Now this is the Ith from Maze of Ith. This is his maze.
Yep.
And yeah, so here's the problem with Ith High Arcanist. Let's read him out. He's 5 white blue for a 3/5 legendary creature human wizard. That's pretty expensive. He's got vigilance and he has the same ability that Maze of Ith has. Tap, untap target attacking creature, prevents all combat damage that would be dealt to and dealt by that creature this turn. Mm-hmm. And then he has Suspend 4 for white and a blue. So you might be thinking, oh, that's awesome. I can suspend him for 2 mana from the command zone. No, you can't.
No, you cannot.
No, you can't. Suspend only works from your hand. I am so sorry. This is why nobody plays Ith and why you've never seen him get played.
The more you know.
Yeah.
What else?
If you could get it from the command zone, I'd probably play him sometime. We have this little bit less well-known fog, but a little bit more resourceful. This is Prov Spires of Order. Basically a completely unplayed utility land. Tap, add colorless to your mana pool. It also has 4 white-blue tap. So 6 mana on the ability, 7 mana equivalent. It's a high cost. Prevent all damage a source of your choice would deal this turn. This is significant. Even though it's a 7 mana equivalent ability, and that is a lot, this can prevent damage from a spell. Or
Blasphemous Act is now
Exactly. All damage from a source of your choice. That's quite the rattlesnake. You can nullify a burn effect. Mm-hmm. You can nullify a board wipe that does damage. You can also turn back an attacker. But it's better than that because rather than Maze of Ith's effect, where you basically pretend like that creature never even attacked, you just untap it and say, we're going to put everything back, it can't get it. This is different. This doesn't untap the attacking creature. And it doesn't prevent damage that would be dealt to it. Mm-hmm. So you can set up a very unfavorable block this way. Now, it's an incredibly expensive effect. Nobody really plays this effect. It's just something interesting to think about, I think.
Maybe it's something where, I just want to deal combat damage. Okay, well, you do combat damage and you'll get your effect. Okay, this can turn that off. But again, preventing all damage, all damage
of a source.
Of your choice. Yeah. It's so crazy. Comet Storm, any X spell, absolutely not a problem.
And it's not target source.
No.
So an emblem's damage can be stopped this way.
Yep, it's a source of your choice.
Yeah.
It's a very cool card, and for the record, it's about a quarter.
There's a reason it's a quarter.
Yeah, but at least it's a utility land that does tap for a mana. Like it isn't absolutely useless on a stick on its own. So
let's do something that's very adjacent to the fog. It's not quite a fog, but it's right next door. Mm-hmm. And that's tap, kill your stuff.
Yep.
So the one that I want to bring out first here is Soul Snare.
Okay.
Which is a single white for an enchantment with an activated ability, white, and sacrifice Soul Snare. Exile target creature that's attacking you or a planeswalker you control.
Sure.
Well, Mike, obviously that's not going to blow up more than one thing, but it's certainly going to make people second guess whether they want to get their big creature exiled for attacking you and it never comes back.
Hey Mike, can I attack this person? Hey Mike, can I attack this person? Hey Mike. My favorite.
It's only for you though. It's only attacking you or a planeswalker you control. Yeah.
Right. So it's not the same thing by any means. But now it's Mike, can I attack you? I'd rather you didn't. And if you do, something bad's gonna happen.
I'd rather you didn't.
If I attack you, is it going to go well? I don't know. Is it?
But we know that that's not, by any stretch of the imagination, the limit of power that tap kill your stuff can be at. This is a classic from a ways back. What was this from? This is from Conspiracy. Avatar of Woe.
This was my first, like, legitimate Magic card that made me go, whoa.
Yeah, this
and
Avatar
it wasn't
of
just for
Woe.
the fun. I love that card.
Yeah. What a great effect on this card. Avatar of Woe, 6 black for a creature avatar. It's a 6/5.
That's so expensive.
But if there are 10 or more creature cards in all graveyards, that's all graveyards combined, Avatar of Woe costs 6 less to cast, which means it costs black. Black for a 6/5 with Fear, which means this creature can't be blocked except by artifact or black creatures. And the activated ability, destroy target creature, it can't be regenerated.
Oh.
For 2 mana, you have one of the harshest spot removal rattlesnakes. If anyone does anything you don't want with one of their creatures, you can just say, oh, absolutely not. That is going straight to the graveyard.
Time to peace out.
Yeah. You can really threaten someone.
Another one of those cards that got infinitely better as multiplayer became a bigger format.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Because when you have 4 graveyards, that's a lot more than 2 graveyards.
It sure is.
Now, it was designed for a pot of 4. Conspiracy was a multiplayer draft format. Did you know that? Yeah.
I did not know that. Well, there we go. Again, the more you know. Judge Alex. Ring the bell twice.
Ding, ding.
Ding, ding. Avatar of Woe is fantastic. And anything that gives the, destroy target permanent, always good. I kind of want to move on here to Lux Cannon. Because it's going to take some time.
That's a slow boy right there.
It's a slower boy.
But proliferate decks might like it. Let's hear about it.
Oh, they absolutely do. So this is an artifact for 4 generic mana. You can tap to put a charge counter on Lux Cannon. And then you can tap it, remove 3 charge counters from Lux Cannon, destroy target permanent.
Mm-hmm.
So I get what you're saying. Like, you're right. Proliferate decks, absolutely, totally fine with this. The other one is, I don't know if you have any decks, Alex, where you like to untap a lot of artifacts.
I might have one deck that likes to do that.
Yeah. But if you're untapping on everybody else's untap,
like an unwinding clock or something.
Yep, something along those lines.
With an unwinding clock, this is so deadly.
This can be a very, very, very oppressive card. It's another one of those that, it's definitely not for every deck, but it does what you want to do. It's, at the very, very least, what this card is I'm going to tap this and power it up, and you're either going to have to waste one of your removal spells to get rid of it, or I'm going to have a position where I can blow something up at will. Are you sure that you want to do that? I'll probably, are you sure you want to go in that rattlesnake deck?
Yeah.
I love that card.
Lux Cannon is really viewed as a very low power card. You really don't see it. And I think it's because it's just very, very niche.
Yep.
But there are 2 other cards of note that I would like to talk about in this category. The first one, very famous lore card, Legacy Weapon.
Mm-hmm.
Legacy Weapon is a 7-mana legendary artifact that tells the story of the Weatherlight Saga. For Wooburg, exile target permanent. Oh, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Wooburg, exile target permanent. If Legacy Weapon would be put into a graveyard from anywhere, reveal it and shuffle it into its owner's library.
Oofa doofa.
Now, that's a lot of mana, Mike.
It is.
But
that's a 7-mana artifact that requires 5 specific mana activate.
Don't you feel fancy when you Joda somebody out of existence?
Yep.
This is like that.
Yep. Oh, well, all right. Now, when you say Joda somebody out of existence, I love Legacy Weapon. It's very cool.
But you don't like Joda.
No, I like Joda too. Joda's fine. I don't have a Joda deck, but I have Joda in a deck, so I get it.
Right.
But if you're talking about Joda-ing somebody out of existence, this doesn't exist. This is what we should have talked about before, but I can't think of a better time than literally, again, Joda-ing somebody out of existence. Can we talk about Door to Nothingness real quick?
Boy, we sure can, Mike.
Oh boy, it's so silly. 5 generic artifact, Door to Nothingness enters the battlefield tapped. For Wooburg twice, that's 2 white, 2 blue, 2 black, 2 red, 2 green, and tap it, sacrifice Door to Nothingness. Target player loses the game.
Yeah. This card is so hype. It never gets set up. This is the Chekhov's gun that doesn't go off.
No.
Because the upshot in a 2-player format is 10 mana win the game, which is very, very hard to do.
Sure.
But could possibly be worth 10 mana if you can generate an infinite amount of mana. However, we're in a multiplayer format, so what you're going to do with this is maybe make one player lose the game, and then everyone else is like, let's kill that guy.
Yep. Pretty much.
Yeah. That's a really fun card.
It's so silly, and just for our flavor text win of the week, only a madman could create such a door. Only an imbecile would open it.
Only an imbecile would open it.
I love that so much.
The last one that I want to talk about in this category is the first mono-white commander, Lieutenant Kirar.
I did not know about this one before you brought it up. I'm pretty happy about it.
From Mirari, for 1 white. It's a legendary creature, Bird Soldier, for 2/2 with flying, and it has an activated ability, pay 1 and a white, sacrifice Lieutenant Kirar, or Kirtar, exile target attacking creature. Now, this is from way back in the day, so, little not super efficient on the meta. However, sure. I love this idea of attack me at your own risk.
I was going to say this kind of leans into one of our other topics that we're talking about. But it's, hey, this is, I'm going to take you down with me. If you do this, I'm sacking this. And if this is your commander, first of all, are you doing okay? But more importantly, it's I'm going to sacrifice this, but your thing's getting exiled. Good
or you're
luck.
going to do something else.
Right.
Yeah, there's a whole host of cards that are in this category that Mike's itching to get to. Kill or destroy at your own risk.
Love it. These are the political cards that I live for. This is where we're at, buddy. I'll tell you what.
Yeah.
Do you want to go ahead and start with the big one up top?
Oh, let's start with this big boy right here. Bearer of the Heavens.
Yeah.
For 7 and a red creature giant, it's a 10/10. When Bearer of the Heavens dies, destroy all permanents at the beginning of the next end step. Now that's Atlas holding the world up, and then when you kill Atlas, that's the entire world crashing down on you and being destroyed.
Yep. This is the
pretty awesome.
You know what? Teferi's protection is pretty good. Let's do that.
No kidding. Yeah.
I do like that a lot. It's anytime it's destroy all permanents.
So mean.
Oof.
Oh.
And I like how they say that this is they're basically paying this as a downside. Like it's an 8 mana 10/10.
Yeah.
That says, oh, by the way, when it dies, everything else does too.
That's the only effect that anyone cares about.
Yeah. Red, are you doing okay, buddy?
in Kamigawa and again in Iconic Masters, there was a cycle of legendary dragon spirits, Mike, that had some interesting effects when they died. Do you want to talk about one of these?
Yeah. Let's go ahead and start with the I think the meanest one. Because I've played them all, and this is the one that
I think I know which one you're talking about.
Well, Yosei the Morning Star. 4 generic, 2 white, legendary creature, dragon spirit, 5/5 flying. All of that sounds well and good. When Yosei the Morning Star dies, target player skips his or her next untap step. Tap up to 5 target permanents that player controls.
Oh, it's so brutal.
Do you know what white likes to do?
Stacks.
It likes stacks. It also likes to recur creatures from time to time. Yeah. There is nothing grosser than putting a Yosei in a. Yosei really likes to be in a Mimic Vat with any kind of Sack outlet. It's the meanest thing that you can possibly do. It's an oppressive effect.
It's just positively brutal. Nobody wants Yosei to be pointed at them.
Nope.
Because that's really quite akin to being hit by a Vorinclex. Not the new Vorinclex, but the old one.
Right.
That says that as long as Vorinclex is in play, lands your opponents control don't, when they tap them, they don't untap during your next untap step. This is quite a bit like that, except instead of lands, it's whatever I feel like, which is probably some lands.
Also, these other 5 things in addition, they're not going to be doing much this next.
Truly just devastating.
How about we move on to one of the nicer?
Oh, here's a nice one. This one's really nice. Phyrexian Obliterator.
Oh,
yeah, just very, very nice. For quadruple black, creature horror for a 5/5 with trample. Whenever a source deals damage to Phyrexian Obliterator, that source's controller sacks that many permanents.
Oofa
oh,
doofa.
Boy. Isn't this nicer, Mike?
But, okay. So, in a way, it is. Because, you know what? If I sacrifice the Phyrexian Obliterator, it's totally fine. It's just gone. I can't... Alex, there's no cards that allow somebody to say you're going to do damage to this thing, right?
I mean...
Except for all the cards that allow you to do that.
Yeah. Also, any attacks on the ground. This card basically says, don't ever attack me as long as this creature's on the board. Because if you do, it's bad news.
If you attack me, you better have a token deck.
Yeah.
And you better be good with a lot of those things going away.
Yeah.
Holy cow. That card's so rough.
Just nasty. Behold blessed perfection.
Sure.
Yeah.
And then there's a bunch of cards that are just like, hey, when this dies, destroy a permanent. You know, High Priest of Penance, 1 white, 1 black, human cleric. When Penance is dealt damage, you may destroy target non-land permanent. Well, it's a 1/1. Unless you can do something to give it, indestructible. Gross. You go straight into Archon of Justice. 3 generic, 2 white, Archon, 4/4 with flying. When Archon of Justice dies, exile target permanent.
Oh.
Okay. Exile target permanent is rough.
You know what's even rougher than...
Do you really want to lose your Gaia's Cradle?
Don't losing your Gaia's Cradle. It's someone else getting the power level equivalent of a Gaia's Cradle. Let's talk about Academy Rector.
Hell yeah. When I said, do you want to start with the big boy at the top of the list? I forgot that we were looking at Bearer of the Heavens because this is what I was talking about. Oh, this is
what you meant?
This card is so scary.
I don't think of her as a big boy. I think of her as like a nice grandma that's just going to wrap your knuckles if you do something wrong.
Oh, I'm more looking at the price tag too.
Oh, yeah. No, she's expensive. So, Academy Rector is a classic card. It's a 1/2 cleric for 3 and a white. When Academy Rector dies, you may exile it. If you do, search your library for an enchantment card and put it onto the battlefield. I love this card so much. It is so awesome. I love people having no desire to ever attack me because they might hit my Rector and then I'm going to find something real mean.
I'm trying to remember the name of the card, but it was one of the weirdest group hug decks that I played, and I deconstructed it because it was fun, but it was bad. And I realized, like, oh, I don't have a win con in this. It's just for doing weird stuff. I think it was called is it Fractured Identity, where if you could destroy a permanent and then everybody else gets a copy of that permanent.
That's the one.
One of my favorite things I've ever done is Fractured Identity to my own Academy Rector. It's like, you know what? I'm gonna do something and it's gonna be really cool, but I'm gonna give everybody the same chance.
There's also her sister or niece, maybe, Arena Rector.
Yep.
For 3 and a white, 1/2 human cleric. When Arena Rector dies, you may exile it. If you do, search your library for a Planeswalker card and put it onto the battlefield. Shuffle your library. That is not nothing.
No, it surprises me that there is such a... I understand there is a lot more scary enchantments. Enchantments have been around a lot longer than Planeswalkers. There are some terrifying Planeswalkers. So the idea of this card being basically $10 versus Academy Rector being $102.
The enchantments just combo off so much easier. Omniscience.
I know.
Yeah.
It's just, man, come on, Arena Rector, get up there. You can do it. I like how they're both like, hey, what's up? They're very smug about it. Go ahead and kill me. I dare you.
Here's a big time kill at your own risk. This is a classic stacks piece. Aura of Silence.
Yeah.
For 1 white, an enchantment that says artifact and enchantment spells your opponents cast cost 2 more to cast. And then it has an activated ability, sacrifice Aura of Silence, destroy target artifact or enchantment. That is really mean because they really want to remove that And
Nope.
you know that as soon as they do, you're going to blow up their stuff.
Yep.
Yeah.
There's going to be a problem. It's again, it's the example of snakebite where it is literally, it's a rattlesnake.
Like, what's worse?
How bad do you want to get rid of this thing?
Letting it bite you.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, bleh. So mean.
There's one more in this set that's a couple more actually. This is one that I really like, but nobody seems to know about her. But she's in the card art for one of the new cards in Secret Lair Black as Magic, and that is Jorale, the Empress of Beasts.
I'm very happy because we peek behind the curtain. We had talked about making a list of rattlesnakes, and then we realized, wow, there's a whole lot of rattlesnakes.
There's a lot,
and
I'm glad.
And eventually, and we made the first walk through the list, and I have Jorale in more than one deck, and in one of those decks it's because I play a lot of lands, so I want to make it's a lands deck. I want to make all those lands into creatures and attack. That's my win condition essentially. But holy cow, is it work both ways, and it can be super mean. Go ahead, buddy.
Yeah, a lot of people don't even realize that this is also a rattlesnake effect, and that's what I use it for. Jorale, Empress of Beasts, 3 green for a 3/3 legendary creature human spell shaper with the activated ability 2 and a green, tap, discard 2 cards. Until end of turn, all lands target player controls are 3/3 creatures that are still lands. Now, a lot of people look at that, Mike, and they think, oh, this is a finisher to a aggro deck that has a lot of ramp, because now you have an additional 5, 10, 15, 20 creatures, depending on how many lands you have. You're in a green deck, after all, that can now attack and, get in for good damage. But that's not why we're talking about her. No. We're talking about her because of this thing that's that you can threaten to do with her that people may not realize you can do. And that's, you don't have to target yourself.
Nope.
You can target another player and say, well, what good would that do? That's just going to give them more blockers. That's just going to give them advantage.
Which politically, sure, that could be helpful.
Sure, it could. That's not really what I want to use it for right now. I want to use it when somebody is threatening to wipe the board.
Wrath of God doesn't say all non-land creatures.
Yeah.
Chain Reaction doesn't deal damage to all non-land creatures.
Now, there are effects that say destroy all non-land permanents. This isn't to protect against that. This is specifically to protect against creature board wipes. Destroy all creatures.
Yep.
Things like that. And
deal damage to all creatures.
That is because all of their lands are now land creatures. And land creatures can be destroyed by Doomscar, Wrath of God, every other board wipe. And this is just absolutely brutal. If they want to subvert your position, and presumably you're in a green deck, which means you're running this in a deck that has a lot of board commitment. You're putting a lot of permanents on the board. You're overextending and getting aggressive. That's something that's going to draw the wrath. And this is something that says, if you wrath, I'm going to make your life completely miserable. All of your lands are going to get blown up.
You're going to do the thing you want to do, but are you sure you want to? It's going to hurt you a lot more than
it's not even me who's blowing up your lands. You're blowing up your own lands.
Yes. You're just blowing up the creatures. I don't know. I mean, I'm sorry that those things that you tap for mana so you can play the game turn into creatures.
Yeah. How did that happen?
She's a rough cookie.
I have one last one to talk about in this category. And
yes, please.
And that's Glenalendra Archmage.
Yeah, permission.
Oh, what a great creature. 3 and a blue for a 2/2 fairy wizard with fly and persist, and pay a blue and sack Glenalendra Archmage, counter target non-creature spell. Holy moly. This is such a nasty card because it can counter 2 spells at least.
At least.
If somebody removes it, she's going to come back, and you can get another counterspell with her. If somebody has a counterspell that's going to remove her, you can counter that spell, and then just bring her right back. We'll talk about how so many of these rattlesnakes are effective because they force someone to act twice to get one effect. They have to remove your thing twice. They have to kill this thing before they can wipe your board, etc., etc. This is the same thing, but instead of 2 times, it's 3 times.
Right.
You'll have to burn 2 spells to get her off the board. You'll have to destroy her twice, and then another effect to get through an uncountered spell. This is... I mean, you don't have to be in a fairy or a wizard deck to run Glenolendra, Mike. I don't know about you. I love this card.
Just running blue. I mean, it's... And again, if it's on the board, it turns into, again, one of my favorite things. Mm-hmm. Mike, can I play this? Mike, can I play this?
Boy, you sure can.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, absolutely. Go for it. Oh, no, not that. No, sorry.
No, not that. Okay. Nope.
I don't have a Glenolendra for reasons, because I feel like it would awaken something dark inside me. But I also fully acknowledge the amount of power and the fun that Glenolendra is.
There's one more category that we want to talk about here, and that's Graveyard Go Bye-Bye. Now, I didn't write this category name, so I would have just called it Graveyard Hate. We'll call it Graveyard Hate. Perhaps some of the most classic Graveyard Hate cards in the entire game are on this list, because most of them work like this. Let's start small. How about Nihil Spellbomb?
Sure.
It's for 1. It's an artifact. Tap and sacrifice Nihil Spellbomb. Exile all cards from target player's graveyard. When Nihil Spellbomb is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, you may pay black. If you do, draw a card.
Okay.
That's it. It's simple.
1 mana.
It's effective. It's cheap.
And it replaces itself in a way. Like, okay,
yep.
Fine. That's pretty efficient. And I think that's kind of the thing that's been really weird looking into this specific part of the list. Graveyard is becoming more and more and more of a resource in our format.
Right.
And the ways to shut down graveyards are so incredibly cheap.
So cheap.
I mean, like, you want to know how cheap? How about we talk about Tormod's Crypt?
Tormod's Crypt.
0 mana artifact. Tap. Sacrifice Tormod's Crypt. Exile all cards from target player's graveyard.
That's it.
The end. That's ridiculous.
That's for 0 mana. What if you're willing to pay 1 mana? How about if you want Relic of Progenitus for 1 mana? You get an artifact. Tap, target player exiles a card from their graveyard. And it also has pay 1 and exile Relic of Progenitus. Exile all cards from all graveyards. Draw a card. Now, the interesting thing about this is that not only do you have the Rattlesnake of the big graveyard exile effect that, will hose all the reanimator decks and all the decks that care about their graveyards, but you also had this tempo effect where, especially early in the game, where a lot of cards aren't being dumped into graveyards yet, but maybe somebody entombs something, maybe somebody has a Crucible of Worlds and they're putting fetch lands into their graveyard.
Maybe you're talking about a Marin deck that literally just got their Spore Frog into the graveyard last turn.
Now, at instant speed, exile a card from his or her graveyard. Now, this is important. That player will choose what card they exile from their graveyard.
Yes.
So the earlier in the game it is, the emptier their graveyard is, the more effective that is. But even if they pick the one you don't want, well, you know what? You can just pay 1, exile it, and just blow up all the graveyards. And this is not the only card in this category. There's also Silent Gravestone.
No. If 1 mana to cast and then 1 mana to activate, exile all cards from all graveyards is too much for you, well, okay, how about 1? Soul Guide Lantern, 1 mana artifact. When it enters the battlefield, exile target card from a graveyard, so it's already doing work. You can sacrifice it and tap it, and you can exile each opponent's graveyard, so you're even keeping your own at that point. And you can pay 1, tap it, sacrifice it, draw a card. So it's a lot of different options on a stick. Alex, why don't you lead us into our next one?
Silent Gravestone is a 1 mana artifact that says cards in graveyards can't be the targets of spells or abilities. So it's going to be really hard for somebody to get a card out of the graveyard and onto the battlefield when they can't target it. They would have to do a mass reanimation effect, which costs more. But it also has an activated ability. Pay 4 and tap, exile Silent Gravestone, and all cards from all graveyards, draw a card. So that's the great thing about these graveyard hate effects. They're ridiculously cheap, and they either have multiple upsides or multiple rattlesnakes. Graveyard Hate is very, very effective, Mike. Do you run any Graveyard Hate?
I run Ground Seal. I don't run the eggs. I've got one Bajuka Bog.
Mm-hmm.
I don't run Graveyard Hate as Rattlesnakes more times than not. Because for me,
but they always could be used as them.
They could be. Like,
right.
I usually use the overall, I'm never going to use something out of my graveyard, so I'm just going to have this that nobody else can. But I think it would be better for me to run some of these Rattlesnake type of cards, because it's the idea of making people decide and make deals with me rather than just shutting something down is a lot more attractive.
Sure, Mike. The next one I have here is Scavenger Grounds. I love this card. Scavenger Grounds is a desert land, utility land. Tap and add a colorless, and 2 tap, sacrifice a desert, exile all cards from all graveyards. Mm-hmm. The opportunity cost, Mike, of running an effect on a utility land is so low because it makes you mana and it's a land. So an effect like this, Bajuka Bog in a black deck, but if you're not in a black deck, right here, Scavenger Grounds. And sure. If you are so inclined, I haven't gone this far, but some people have, you can run multiple deserts in your mana base so that you can continue to exile graveyards. Because Scavenger Grounds doesn't tell you to exile itself. It can, because it is a desert, and that's usually how I'm using it. But if you were so inclined, you could exile another desert. Not too many of the deserts are worth running, but hey, that's always available. That is something that's very possible to do.
If that's the effect that you're looking for, there it is. So I'll tell you what, but there's still so many rattlesnakes, and there's still so many cards. So I'll tell you what, we're not running long, but we're approaching. I want each of us to pick one more rattlesnake, whether it's something that's on this list or it's something that's a little bit, out there. Maybe it's kind of in a category we weren't sure of.
Right.
Do you want to go first or should I?
Let's see what I want. Mike, I know the perfect card.
Okay.
Karmic Justice.
Yeah. Damn it. Okay.
Oh, is that the one you were going to pick, Mike?
That's fine. I had a backup already.
Karmic Justice is 2 and a white for an enchantment. Whenever a spell or ability an opponent controls destroys a non-creature permanent you control, you may destroy target permanent that opponent controls. So that's, tongue twister. Basically what that means is if an opponent blows up one of your non-creature permanents, you can blow any of their permanents up at instant speed. It's a trigger.
It's way better Martyr's Bond.
Oh, it's great.
And Martyr's Bond is good. This is such a good card.
Martyr's Bond is a horse of a different color, Mike, because with Martyr's Bond, you can destroy your own things and blow up other people's things.
Correct.
If you're feeling really mean. But Karmic Justice it's half the cost. Instead of whatever it is, like 4 double white, this is 2 and a white. And boy howdy, when you have this up, nobody wants to blow your stuff up. Why would anybody want to blow your stuff up when you can destroy the best thing they have? You can destroy their Gaia's Cradle, their commander, their biggest mana rock, anything. Oh, it's just... And that includes this permanent. If they try to blow this up, which they will want to.
They will.
Yeah.
They'll take that rattlesnake bite so they can...
Oh, you want to blow this up? That's okay. I'll just blow up your best stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. In most of these situations, that's the right move.
But you still get completely ruined.
You do. You have to say, okay, do I want to get one really, really, really nasty snake bite now? Or 10 later?
Yeah.
Because that's what you're dealing with.
That's the problem. People can't plan ahead that well. People don't often form these plans of like, oh my gosh, Karmic Justice is such a big and scary snake that I have to find a way to beat it. Most people will be like, oh my god, I can't even touch them. They feel chilled and defeated by it rather than feeling invigorated to destroy it. Now some people do, and those people are still getting bit. That's the best part.
So I tell you what, Alex, you picked Karmic Justice, which was one of the 2 cards I was thinking about.
Okay.
So as far as I'm concerned, this is a twofer for me.
All right.
Your card is very upfront about what it does and how mean it is.
Mm-hmm.
My card lets you know that there is an infinite amount of possibility of the mean that exists. I want to talk about Sunforger. I love Sunforger.
Oh, that's great.
3-mana artifact. Equipped creature gets +4/+0. Well, okay, sure. With an equip cost of 3. More importantly, for a red and a white and unattaching Sunforger, search your library for a red or white instant card with converted mana cost 4 or less, and cast that card without paying its mana cost. Then shuffle your library.
Yeah.
Alex, phenomenal. there's a whole lot of red and white instants for 4 mana or less that are destructive.
How about Teferi's Protection?
Teferi's pretty good. Teferi's pretty good. But you know what? Maybe you don't want to do that. Maybe you want to do something silly, like cast Master Warcraft right before your combat.
How about Boros Charm?
Yeah, how about that? Even if you want to do something silly, like, I don't know. Oh man, look at that really big scary creature, Path.
Yep.
I love Sunforger. It is one of those cards that I'm really thankful they reprinted a couple of times recently, because I felt like this card was up there for a bit, and now it's less than $1.
That's good, because this is it's a Boros staple. Every single Boros deck likes this card.
Right, because the only decks that don't like this are a Boros deck that has no instants, and if you're running that, I really hope you got a interesting win con, because that's how you keep up. I think with a lot of the stuff that's going on. I have a Jeskai
deck, and this used to be in there, but the reason why it was in there was because I counted, and I had 10 red or white instant spells with CMC 4 or less. Having an equipment that will find me some of my best spot removals, some of my best just ruin the board pieces, this is great, but you do have to keep that in mind. You're running an effect that tutors out a specific kind of card. So if you do not have... 10 is like the lowest. I would not do any less than 10. If you have fewer than 10 red or white instant cards CMC 4 or less in your deck, either add some more or don't add this.
Okay, 2 things.
Yeah.
First of all, you said tutor, and you're right, but it's not just tutor. It's tutor and cast. I'm not tutor putting it in my
cast.
Head. Yeah. So it's tutor plus.
Yes,
I love it. And this might be just a deck building. This might be a deck building disconnect that we have, which is good, because you and I agree far too often. If I have like if I have an instant that is an absolute win con, and that's why I brought up Master Warcraft. If I have an instant that's an absolute win con, and I've got a couple more that if I've got something that's got enough spice to it, if I'm running 4 or 5. I'm comfortable with something like Sunforger, but that's also because I'm usually running this in equipment decks. So the synergies is going to be a little bit better.
In an equipment deck, it's a little bit of a different story. I'm really talking about a Boros deck that doesn't have equipment. You need a high number of synergy.
That's fair. And sometimes for those, it's there's been a Boros deck that I've made in the past where Sunforger was the only equipment.
Right.
But I also put in the Open the Armory card so I could specifically find Sunforger.
Now, in an equipment deck, it's way better because you have these Sigarda's 8 effects where you equip for 0. So instead of paying 3 red-white to tutor a CMC 4 card, you're paying red-white, which is way better.
Yep. I will tell you outright that Jessica and Arden.
Yeah.
Sunforger does some work.
Oh, I bet it does.
So those are some of the rattlesnakes that we wanted to bring up. There are tons of other ones.
So many.
So hit us up with some of your favorite ones. Like we didn't even talk about Mangara. We didn't talk about we didn't talk about all of these cards that are like, whoa.
There's so many.
That's because our list is like 65 cards. And we only talked about this for a little bit. So we're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back with some advice and a couple extra cards before Alex is going to talk us about a video that he had sent, and I'm pretty excited about it. We'll be right back. All right, we're back with something old, something new, some advice for some veteran players from Alex, and my advice for some newer players is it's okay to give away some information for free. We're talking about rattlesnakes and how scary they are because, oh, look at this imminent threat. But a threat is just that. It can be a bluff. It could just be words. But if you have something to back it up, if you have facts, if you have evidence, It's not a threat, it's a promise. And that is a pretty effective measure of power. But even then, even if you just want to get across the... Even if you want to get away from the, well, this is scary, and this is how to be more scary. For me, just let people know what your plan is. This is something that Alex has touched on specifically in the past. Mm-hmm. But for new players, let people know what your plan is. If you're sitting there saying, hey, I'm going to set this stuff up, I'm hoping that I can attack you guys next turn. Maybe that means they're going to try and stop you. And maybe that means that you don't get the win that you probably could have if you had been sneaky about it. But think about how much they're going to, like, respect what you're saying. Think about how much they're going to say, ooh, you know what? I'm willing to make a deal with this guy. I'm willing to make a deal with her. Because they're telling me what's going on. They're putting their information up front. That's really important.
Integrity.
And I'm always making deals with those people if I can.
You know, Mike, this sounds eerily similar to that advice that I had about announcing what you're doing to veteran players.
I agree. And the reason that I'm saying it is because a rattlesnake isn't just a rattlesnake. Mm-hmm. A rattlesnake has to have some weight behind it. And sometimes that's you, like, hey, I've got a counterspell in my hand.
Right.
Do you? Yeah, here it is. You know, it's saying this is what we're working with. This is what I'm working with. So what's the plan?
You're dipping a little bit into what I had, and that's to try some of these verbal or nonverbal rattlesnake on the table off the card effects. And we talked about a couple of them, so I'll go ahead and recap. I have 4 different ones here. And the first was revealing a card from a hidden zone, like your hand, or like from face down on the battlefield or in exile. Just to allow people to know that you have it.
Sure.
To prove that you have it. But you don't have to do that every time, because then if you don't have it, you kind of put yourself in a corner. So use this selectively. Show off when it's appropriate.
Okay.
But don't make the only time that you don't show the card off when you don't have the card, because that's going to make it pretty difficult to bluff effectively if you have a reputation for, flashing the card. Speaking of that, the reputation itself, you can cultivate a reputation. We talked about this in a previous episode. I mentioned the rabid dog technique. Mm-hmm. And that's not the only one. There are other ones. But basically, if you advocate for yourself and you respond to threats that are leveled at you, that are dealt to you when something dishonorable happens to you, if somebody breaks a deal that they had with you, things that have spurned you need to be avenged 77-fold. You need to make them in the game, regret the day they were born. Mm-hmm. Not in real life, but in the game. If somebody messes with you, one option you have to cultivate a reputation is say, well, I did have a plan, but if I fall, you're going down with me.
Yeah.
Now,
no, absolutely.
You don't have to do that every time, and that may not just be who you want to be, but I will tell you that doing things like that regularly, without being, mean about it, like, oh, I hate you so much, but more like, hey, this is what I said was going to happen, and now this is what's happening. Tough break, man. Maybe next time you won't hit me. But you tell them what's going on. Having that reputation is very powerful, because it's not a reputation for whining or for complaining or for being a poor sport. It's a reputation for standing up for what you have, and maybe not making yourself like, oh, don't hit me, but like, oh my gosh, if I hit Mike, he is just going to ruin my board. I can't do that. Like, at that point, they've turned it away from you without you even having to have made an argument for yourself. And that's the ultimate rattlesnake, right? It's already in their head. Your rattlesnake is living rent-free in their head, Mike.
I like that.
But I
like that a lot.
We have a couple of other ones. Earlier I talked about holding up an iconic amount of mana. Your blue, your single white, your 6 blue. And this is another strategy. And as long as you're doing that prominently and making it clear that you're holding mana up to do a thing or to consider doing a thing, and not because you don't have anything to do. Because if they think you don't have anything to do, then you're not a threat. But if they know that you've made a choice not to tap out because you do have something you may want to do, then the more coherent that threat becomes in their head, whether you reveal it, whether you imply what it is, whether you give sort of a vague implication like, I'm not really going to say what it is, but let's just keep your hands off my board, right? This kind of thing can work very effectively with bluffing. You do not have to have a counterspell. You don't have to have spot removal. You don't have to have a Psych Rift. As long as you can reasonably convince other people that you do, then you do have one. And it just counter that spell. And it just removed that permanent because they never played it in the first place.
All right. All right. Yeah. I mean, it's not lying. It's bluffing. But it's not bluffing.
Bluffing is lying.
It's showing the option of.
Right. It's very important that we have a distinction here, because when we talk about lying, we're talking about withholding information and then implying that you're not withholding any information.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, sure, I won't attack you. Fingers crossed. But you're withholding the information that you really will attack them. You're breaking that covenant. That's a feels bad situation. Mm-hmm. Bluffing is different, in my opinion. When you're bluffing, you're not really withholding information because the information is already withheld. You have a hidden set of cards. They don't know what's in them. And they know that they don't know what's in them. But you can convince them that you have something that they don't want you to use. You don't have to tell them what it is. You don't even have to say that you have it, as long as you can convince somebody that you might do something. And it's a very, very special dance, isn't it, Mike?
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that a lot. That's pretty slick. So I'll tell you what. You're talking about the information that isn't on the cards.
Mm-hmm.
How about we talk about some cards some more? Let's move on to... Ooh, can I see that?
Yep.
So we're going to talk about some cards that are really underplayed. We each think that we're bringing some really interesting cards to the table. And if you want to grab them, you can help us out in the process. So we have partnered with tcgplayer.com. So if you're looking for any singles, sealed product, deck boxes, sleeves, playmats, really anything to spice up your game experience, go to bit.ly/EDHsocial or click on the link in our show notes. You don't pay anything extra, and you'll really help us out by buying all the things you were going to anyway. Alex, why don't you start us off with a card our listeners may be interested in picking up and may have heard fairly recently, but we got to dive into this because it didn't get nearly enough love.
Yeah, in the other week's episode with Rachel Weeks, who just a lovely guest to have. Very pleased
Absolutely.
That we would have her on. I had a card that I recommended called Null Mage Advocate that was this very group hug style effect where you could give somebody back 3 cards from their graveyard and reanimate a card from your graveyard. And I mentioned that there are 4 other cards in this cycle, and then I rattled them off, probably to everyone's great boredom. However, one of those cards is perfect for what we're talking about today, and that's Rattlesnakes. Spurn Mage Advocate is a creature human nomad. It's a 1/1 for whites. And it has tap, return 2 target cards from an opponent's graveyard to their hand, destroy target attacking creature.
It's a really cheap
and
a powerful effect.
In more than one way. This is printed in Judgment. It's 16 cents.
Yep.
It's in 310 decks, which is 0% of white decks. It's a 1/1 for 1 with tap, destroy target attacking creature on it.
Yep.
In white. So the only downside is that somebody has to have 2 cards in their graveyard. Not the person who controls the attacking creature necessarily.
Just somebody.
Just any other opponent has to have 2 cards in their graveyard. That's going to happen pretty often. It's not like 10 creature cards like Avatar of Woe. It's to any cards. Mike, what do you think about Sperm Mage Advocate?
So not only is this a really good rattlesnake, this is also a really good, like, not group hug card, but making friends and deals card.
Political card.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you know what would be a really good card to return to somebody's hand? Fetch land. Hey,
Absolutely.
I can put that back in your hand.
You can
That's
give
okay,
people
buddy.
straight up value.
I got
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
I just want to take care of this thing that's hurting us. It's bad. Ugh. The part of me that was most surprised was the fact that not that it's a 1/1, not that it's even a tap effect without mana, but that it's a 1 mana card.
Yeah.
And it's just like, whoa, that's pretty spicy.
It's a 1 mana card with a 0 mana tap ability that destroys a creature.
Yeah. I don't know.
And it's not a creature that's attacking you. It's
just
any
attacking.
creature that is attacking.
Again, like, you pay 1 mana to play this. And most of the time, people are gonna have to use a resource to get rid of that if it's going to bother them. And there's a couple of 1 mana removal effects, but they're going to be using a 1 mana removal effect on a 1/1 that cost you 1 mana.
Nobody wants to remove this thing. This is such... If you have to use a removal spell on this, you're like, oh my god, I can't believe I have to burn a removal spell on Sperm Mage Advocate.
I can't believe that I have to Chaos Warp this thing so I can use my Atali.
But now, because you've Chaos Warped it, next what comes out is the big boy.
Yeah.
Maybe. We'll see.
We'll see. At the very least, it's very rarely not going to be an upgrade.
It was
I like
reprinted
that card a lot.
one time in Commander 2011, the first Commander set. And that's in the 2008 border. So you have two options. They're both below $0.25.
Yep.
If this sounds interesting to you, please go out and buy it. Use our link at bit.ly/EDH social. Mike, tell me about your card.
Yeah. So I noticed something in the list that we made before, and we talked about some of the cards. But it was surprising to me. There wasn't a ton of blue. And I thought, well, that doesn't seem right. Like, blue has some of the most... Like, Glen Elendra is one of the most rattlesnake cards that's out there, isn't it? And then I thought about it, and it's like, oh, well, that's because blue does most of the stuff at instant speed, or it's a counterspell, or it's a cyclonic rift. Like, that's the big stuff, you know? It's not warning you that it's going to happen. So I kind of put a challenge to myself to try and find a blue snakebite card that people haven't heard of, and I came up with something called Douse. Alex, this is a 2 generic and a blue enchantment. For 1 generic and a blue, counter target red spell, play this ability as an interrupt. So it's just counter red spell for 2 mana on an enchantment.
Repeatable.
Tell me tell me about all the ways that red removes enchantments. Well,
it doesn't do it very well, I'll tell you that.
And if you got 2 mana, it doesn't matter if they have it or not. I like this. I like these kind of cards where it's a, and when I say I mean I appreciate. It doesn't mean that I play them, because this is a cool card. But
very
man,
narrow.
It can hurt. But if you're playing a 4-player game, maybe you're playing this card and it's only really hurting one person. But you know what you can do? You can make deals with that one person because it's a choose to do so effect.
Right.
It's not a have to do so effect. I like it when I have a counterspell on a stick because it means that deals are being made. It means that things can be done. And I'm not stopping people from playing Magic. I'm stopping people from playing mean Magic.
The nice thing about Douse is that you hold up 2 mana with the possibility that you'll counter a red spell.
Yep.
But if you don't, you're in blue.
You still have 2 mana.
You probably have a counterspell or something else, a draw spell. There's no difficulty in a blue deck holding up 2 mana so that maybe once in a while you'll hit a red spell and you don't even go down a card.
Right. This is one of those cards. I see, when you said the best thing about Douse, I thought you were going to say the fact that it's a quarter. But you're right.
It's a quarter.
The actual effect of the card is very impressive, and it's in 174 decks. Like, there are a certain amount of cards, and we'll get into this in future episodes, believe it or not, that I went that is a really powerful effect in blue
Right.
that I found less than like 600 cards, or that I found in less than 600 decks. So I'm gonna preview for a couple of episodes, everybody. I'm gonna be leaning into blue a bit.
Interesting. Mike, when you showed me this card, my mind immediately leapt to two cards in specific that are, I believe, much older than this. Yes, they're older. And maybe more or less well, these cost a little more, so they probably are more well known. Sure. And that's Life Force and Death Grip.
Those were the two that I was thinking of, yeah.
Fantastic. So Life Force is an enchantment for green, and it has an activated ability. Green, counter target black spell. And likewise, Death Grip is an enchantment for black, and it has an activated ability, black, counter target green spell.
I love these enchantments that say, stop this opposing color from trying to do the mean things to you. I kind of like the dual nature of that. And those were the ones that I was looking at. And I was pretty surprised that all of them are, I understand their niche, but it's a niche that you can put Douse in any blue deck. And if you're playing somebody that's playing red, it's a very powerful effect.
Right.
It's not I have to play this in counterspell decks.
The issue is that it's so niche that unless you're in a kitchen table pod or a meta that's very heavy in red, it's difficult to justify running an effect like that. Unless you're in a Blind Seer deck or something like that.
That was actually one of the cards we're going to talk about in the future, buddy.
Fantastic.
So those are the cards that we're talking about this week.
Yeah.
Again, pick those up at bit.ly/EDH Social. And Alex, you sent me a video pretty recently that I got kind of excited about because I saw that you were excited about it. For our judges corner this week, talk to me about Judging for the Win.
Yeah, so Judging for the Win is a newer channel. They just started up about a month and a half ago, I believe, that is posting daily interactions and rulings that right now are, limited because what are they on? They're on 48 as I speak. They'll probably be right. They'll be in the 50s by the time that this episode goes live. But this is just a very nice Magic judge who's recording every day. Here's the first episode. Opalescence and Humility, the classic interaction of layers. And then the most recent one that they had today, Thassa's Oracle and Angel's Grace. That's a fun and interesting interaction. We just needed a thing like this because, as some of you may know, but most of you probably don't, Charlotte is a level 3 judge out of Canada, I believe. And you may not know her name, but I'm willing to bet that you know her blog. And that's the Magic Judges blog with the Orzhov stained glass angel in the background.
Yeah.
That's the one you're always seeing on Google when you're looking up Magic answers. Yeah, she's been doing that blog for 8 years, and she just closed it down at the beginning of this month in February 2021. So that was a great project that she did. It's truly a testament that so many of her blog entries show up just from me searching random rulings and card interactions. That's what happens when you have such a large body of work that allows people who are just hopeless, like, oh my god, I don't know how these two cards interact. No one's helping me. What do I do? And what you don't want is, God bless them, to go on the Magic Salvation forum thread from 15 years ago and hear someone opine about something they don't know about. Now, I'm not saying that Magic Salvation is a bad board. I'm just saying that maybe searching forum threads that are so old that the website should have been shut down by now. Maybe look for something a little more updated. And I was just saying recently that with the Judge Cast, which is a Judge podcast, going off the air this past year, and with Charlotte's blog going off, and with the Gathering Magic Judge series not having updated in 3 years, there's just not that many new resources happening of knowledgeable people, judges, creating a paper trail online for our hopeless wayward wanderers who are trying to find this very specific interaction between two cards and they're totally stuck.
Not everyone is me who talks to you on a regular basis and gets to say, Alex, I don't understand how to Magic. Please help.
And this is a good time to bring this up. There are resources where you can get more on-demand answers, but that's not always something that is a viable option. For example, you may not be able to wait, but there are options. If you want to get in touch with a live judge, you can go to the Judge Chats IRC, where people will help you if they can. And then on many different Discord servers, on the Magic Simulator server, the Commander Spellbook server, the Magic Judges server, the Judge Academy server, the RC server. There's many different EDH Discord servers that have channels specifically dedicated to answering and asking questions about Magic for judges. I'm in several of them, and we are more than happy to help you. But it may not be immediate. That's why things like this that are much more have staying power. Like when I answer a question in a Discord thread, I've helped that person that one time, but
you're going to get that question again.
Right. In 6 months, if somebody else asks that question, they're not going to see my answer in the Google results. They're going to have to ask again. That's why projects like this, like Judging for the Win, which you should go subscribe to right now, is a great resource because these videos will still be here in a year, in 5 years, in 10 years.
Yeah.
And they may not still be accurate, but God, I hope they're still updating at that point. And creating this just solid mass of information about interactions that people can refer to and not have to look back in time to a thread from 2005. And you know you're in trouble when you see a forum thread from 2005. Don't trust it. It's outdated. I'm just glad that this judge has been making this. I just wanted to give that shout out. Thank you very much. And thank you to Charlotte for doing your Magic Judge blog for so many years. We appreciate that as well. And that's it, Mike. That's all I have.
Well, hey, I appreciate that. Like I said, you've been my friend for a long time, and I appreciate the amount of work that being a judge is just for you. So the idea of, people that are doing this, as far as a resource and publicizing all of this stuff rather than, just me being able to just pick your brain all the time.
Right.
Absolutely. That's awesome for you to give them the shout out, and we'll make sure that we link to everything
in our show notes too. In the show notes. Yep.
Yeah, of course. Well, thanks for that. And everybody, thanks for listening. Alex, where can people find you on socials while we're talking about it?
Well, you can find me on Twitter at LapperMedic, LAPPER Medic, or you can email me directly, talk in private, at alex@edhrec.com.
If you've enjoyed any of our conversation, please subscribe and rate the podcast. If you're going to buy any of the cards we talked about, deck boxes, sleeves, etc., you can support us by going to bit.ly/EDHsocial. If you have any questions or comments for us, follow us on Twitter at EDH_social or email us at thesocialcontract, edh@gmail.com. Looking forward to talking to you next week. See y'all soon.